Hi, Praggies. Welcome back to another episode of Pragmatic Optimists. I'm Rachel Cohen. I'm joined by Rhode Island State Senator Tiara Mack. And today we are running a special I fucking told you so episode of Pragmatic Optimists, where we talk about what is currently happening in the corporate legal industry. Those of you who have been around since the beginning of Pragmatic Optimists, who have been following along with me in my work for a long period of time, or, what feels like a long period of time and is in fact more like 7 months, are aware that until earlier this year, I was employed at a large corporate law firm, Skadden Arps. It's actually where our own Michael Popak got his start as well. And in March, resigned over ineffective industry response to Trump administration assaults on rule of law through the mechanism of executive orders targeting big law firms. And ultimately, what ended up happening is a number of large corporate law firms, including my own, entered into, my former, they did this after I had resigned, entered into affirmative deals with the Trump administration to curry favor with him, offering to provide hundreds of millions of dollars, total over $1 billion, I believe, across all of the firms that offered this, in free legal services to the Trump administration or Trump allied causes. But there have been far greater ripple effects throughout the corporate legal industry than just nebulous promised pro bono work. One that I've talked about extensively on my Substack is that a lot of these law firms are representing companies against the Trump administration that then are entering into very strange deals with the Trump administration, like Intel selling 10% to the government, like NVIDIA getting their weird little chip deal that doesn't seem to be written down anywhere and may or may not have ever actually materialized right before their Q3 earnings call or Q2 earnings call. And we're seeing now the one that I was actually, as I was working within the law firm trying to organize, the most concerned about, which is that large corporate law firms, the best resourced attorneys in the entire country, are no longer challenging unconstitutional government action, which is particularly worrisome because we are seeing record-breaking levels of unconstitutional government action. And the way that our legal system works in the United States, unless that unconstitutional government action is actually challenged, then Donald Trump and his henchmen will sit on their laurels and say, well, we're not even breaking the law. If we were breaking the law, somebody would have challenged it. So the Washington Post released yesterday, the 26th of October, a pretty in-depth study of challenges to the Trump administration under Trump 2.0. And the high-level takeaway is that between January and mid-September, the period of time that they examined in Trump 2.0, large corporate law firms represented plaintiffs against the government in 15% of cases challenging executive orders. In Trump 1.0, in the same period of time, large corporate law firms represented 75% of plaintiffs. And I cannot overstate what a difference it makes to have somebody like a Skadden Arps or a Paul Weiss. Paul Weiss challenged the Muslim ban in Trump 1.0 and ended up being the first law firm to enter into a deal with the Trump administration in Trump 2.0. The resources that exist at firms like Paul Weiss or Skadden that bring home billions of dollars in revenue annually, those resources versus the resources of the smaller law firms that are having to step into the breach, or the nonprofit organizations that are having to step into the breach, it makes an unbelievable difference in the type of representation you are able to provide, because at that level of challenge, it is often just a resource game and a manpower game. And so I'm going to go ahead and Tiara, this is very much one where I'd like to know what questions that elicits, because sometimes I just don't realize where I'm not explaining things thoroughly to people who don't have experience in the corporate legal industry, and very few people have experience in the corporate legal industry.
Yeah, so I know that there were only a few major law firms that didn't take these deals, but if these are the folks who have been the referees in the past, they're the ones who are holding government transparency and accountability accountable to the American people. And if they have seen a reduction at the scale of 5-fold reduction of the type of cases they are seeing, what does that do for our ability to have confidence in this government? If the referees are now been bought and sold by this administration and have a vetted interest in not being sued, because a lot of the reason why they made these multi-million-dollar deals for free pro bono legal services, because they also have contracts with the government. You saw, I forget which law now, maybe it was Paul Wise that was threatened to have their security clearances revoked. And if that happened, they would no longer be able to have multi-billion dollars worth of contracts with the government. So you have the referees who are now beholden to this administration that is handcuffing them, saying, we will not allow you to work and get these contracts that generates most of your revenue and keeps many people making $250,000 or more employed within these large infrastructures. What does that do for our confidence in how our government is working? Or can we say with a mild level of confidence, Rachel, that our government now does not work and the referees are now bought and paid for by this administration?
It's a great question. I'm excited to get into it. It's an analogy that we're going to dig into a little more. Before I go any further, I do want to say starting salary, when you include bonus at these law firms, once you graduate from law school, is just under $250,000 a year. So I think that everyone is making more than that, except for the staff and paralegals that really, really do keep those places afloat. But I am going to tweak the analogy just a little bit more before we dive into it, because I think that when we talk about the legal system as attorneys, most of the time we say that the judges are the referees and that it's two teams playing against each other in this adversarial justice system. And so what we're seeing happen, I would argue that certainly some of the judges and the referees in our current legal system are very beholden to Donald Trump and are maybe not bought and paid for, but feel a deep sense of not just loyalty, but also alignment with his kind of Christo-fascist, white nationalist ideology. Whether or not Donald Trump actually holds that, I think it's safe to say many people high up in his administration do and ally with him for that reason. So what we're really seeing, and I think this is a great analogy to kind of come up with, is in the past, when two teams were playing each other, it really was like a legitimate sports game where everyone wanted to do their best, even though doing their best might mean that the other side lost and that they might want to have relationships with the other side at some point, because people wanted to hire, to work with, to think highly of, promote the type of attorneys who were winning. The same way that if you were not a Pats fan during like peak Tom Brady reign, you might have kind of fucking hated Tom Brady a little bit, but also you were like, God, I wish that guy played for me. Like, I know I may not like him, but I know that he is a generational talent. And Tom Brady was playing for that reason, or playing like that well for that reason. And it's not like there was ever a team that he went up against. When Tom Brady went to the Buccaneers, it's not like when he was playing the Buccaneers, he was like throwing the game to get the Bucs to like him. Other teams liked Tom Brady and wanted to bring him over because he was so good. And what we're seeing now is that it is no longer viewed as a good thing within legal challenges to the government to be good if you are challenging the government. Donald Trump no longer, like the legal system that we have at this point at the upper echelons, no longer values good legal representation. It values deference to the Trump administration. And that cannot be how our adversarial justice system works, because the criminal legal system has already been deeply broken by inequitable resources and people having not just more resources, but often like more experienced attorneys if they are on the side of people with power. And now it's not just that. That's one of the things that pro bono was meant to counter. And pro bono challenges to the government, not just the Trump administration, but the government broadly when it engaged in unconstitutional action. Pro bono legal challenges were meant to correct that disproportionate. And it still didn't really work, because like when it's that baked into the system, you can't count on people volunteering their time to come and help you. And like you have to be a certain level of popular and whatever else with the broader consciousness. It's one of the reasons why a lot of Palestinian organizations had a lot of trouble getting pro bono representation when Joe Biden was in office, But we are now seeing that functionally eliminated at the highest levels of the legal industry. And I think that very much does mean that, particularly in cases like this, and there's so many other ways that Donald Trump is undermining the criminal legal system's ability to fight the government. But this, I said I was going to keep this short. I already have not. But this one is very much an area where they are intimidating even firms that did not enter into deals, are just keeping their heads down and ignoring what's happening. And the way that our justice system works, and this is why I say it's an I told you so episode, because I said this in my congressional testimony. I said this in emails that I sent, in letters that I, like the Associate Open letter, that it was so clear that this was about intimidating law firms out of taking on representation that was challenging the Trump administration. And because of the way our justice system works, you have to have lawyers to bring those cases, or they never get brought at all. And the challenges are, we don't even get to the point that we're at in many of the cases throughout the country where we're like, oh no, is Donald Trump going to listen to the judge? Because it never gets in front of the judge. And so I will leave us with a tiny bit of optimism at the end of this rant, which is that smaller law firms, small shops, even a number of extremely well-respected conservative attorneys like Paul Clement are stepping up to challenge the Trump administration. But these corporate law firm partners, like, as Donald Trump has said, I don't know that they were ever getting into heaven. I don't know that that was very likely for them as like fossil fuel millionaires at this point. But I think that the plausible deniability that they had to let themselves sleep at night of like, well, it's an adversarial justice system. And so I'm doing this work that I don't really agree with, but I'm balancing it with all of this other pro bono. That's gone. And I doubt any of y'all watch my stuff, and certainly not to the end on Legal AF on the Midas Touch Network, which you should like, subscribe, and follow along with on YouTube and Substack. But I may be late at night when you're being kept up by the fact that you are rapidly accelerating authoritarianism in a cronyist state that will ultimately sell you out too. I don't know, maybe you watched to the end and that voice in the back of your head is correct. So this has been Pragmatic Optimists, special I Told You So episode with Rachel and Tiara, and we'll see you again soon.
Bye, Praggies.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.